Hello, dear story lovers. At the amount of 1,000 subscribers, I will post a huge series of special stories for you. Subscribe now. The Gorgon Quadrant junkyard stretched as far as the eye could see, a chaotic expanse of twisted metal, scorched ship hulls, and discarded technologies from countless worlds. To Mace Ballard, it was a paradise. A seasoned mechanic with grease-stained hands and an eye for diamonds in the rough, Mace had spent years rummaging through these piles of cosmic refuse, finding treasures that others had dismissed as trash. Today, the son of Karos 5 beat down mercilessly as Mace walked between towering heaps of broken parts. His hovercart floated behind him, already loaded with assorted finds, an energy core from a retired cargo freighter, a box of outdated but reparable navigation circuits, and a rusted plasma welder that might still work. Still, Mace was searching for something special, though he didn't know what. "Hey, Ballard," barked a gruff voice from the entrance gate. Gresh, the junkyard foreman, leaned against the terminal. His cybernetic eye glowed faintly in the heat haze. "You should check out Sector 7C, got something that might interest you. Word is, it's cursed." Mace snorted. "You're just saying that because no one wants it. What's the deal?" "Alien tech," Gresh replied, flashing a grin full of silver teeth. "Came in with a salvage crew last week. Weird stuff. Almost killed 3 of my guys just trying to unload it." "Almost killed?" Sounds like a sales pitch, Mace quipped, but his interest was piqued. Alien ships were rare, even in a galaxy as diverse as theirs. And the promise of danger usually meant cutting-edge technology and profit. He followed Gresh's directions to Sector 7C, where the air was thick with the scent of melted alloys and ozone. At the edge of a crater-like depression sat the ship. It didn't just look out of place, it felt wrong, like it didn't belong in this universe. Its hull shimmered unnaturally, a black so deep it seemed to pull in the light around it. The design was sleek and predatory, with no seams or bolts visible. It was unlike any vessel Mace had seen before, as though it had been grown rather than built. Symbols ran along its sides, glowing faintly blue and shifting subtly, as though alive. The air around it seemed colder, and Mace's breath misted as he approached. A rusted sign on a pole stuck in the ground read, "Do not touch. Unsafe. Foreclosure pending." Mace chuckled. Foreclosure on an alien ship. Classic. Closer inspection revealed the vessel wasn't entirely intact. The starboard wing was heavily damaged, and the rear thrusters looked as though they had been torn apart by an explosion. Yet the interior appeared unscathed, visible through cracks in the hull. He peered inside and saw what looked like a cockpit made for something non-human. The controls were organic in design, smooth and flowing, as if meant to interface directly with the pilot's body. "How much for this beauty?" Mace called over his shoulder. "Beauty?" Gresh scoffed, approaching with a cigar clamped in his teeth. "That thing's trouble, Ballard. Last crew called it the Demon Wing. Said it gave them nightmares just being near it." Mace raised an eyebrow. "And I'll let it go for, let's say, 2,000 creds, Gresh said, clearly expecting Mace to laugh him off. Instead, Mace stroked his chin. 2,000 for alien tech? Even if it's junk, the materials alone are worth double that. Suit yourself, Gresh said with a shrug. But don't come crying to me when it decides to eat you or something. An hour later, Mace watched as the junkyard's loader droids carefully hoisted the ship onto his hauler. Even in its damaged state, the ship seemed to radiate power and defiance. It was as if it resented being handled, the loader's clamps slipping now and then as though the ship was fighting back. As the ship was secured, Mace felt a strange thrill coursing through him. This wasn't just another find, it was a challenge, and maybe even the adventure he'd been craving. Demon Wing, huh, he muttered to himself as he climbed into his truck. We'll see about that. As the hauler trundled out of the junkyard and toward his workshop, Mace couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made the most important purchase of his life and that the ship might not be done making decisions for itself. Mace's workshop, nestled in the shadow of a canyon on Karos 5, was a cluttered haven for broken starships and spare parts. It was his fortress, his playground, and his place of refuge. The newly acquired alien ship, however, seemed to cast a shadow of its own as it rested on the platform, still emanating an eerie presence. The first challenge was figuring out how to even begin repairs. The ship's sleek, unbroken surface was unlike anything Mace had ever worked on. There were no obvious seams, bolts, or panels to pry open. Even the damaged areas seemed to resist tampering, the jagged edges almost healing themselves whenever he tried to weld or cut into them. "This isn't metal," Mace muttered, running a scanner over the hull. The readings were baffling. The material was a hybrid of organic and synthetic compounds, constantly fluctuating at the molecular level. It was alive in some way, though not in any sense he could understand. He set up his tools and prepared to open the cockpit. The transparent canopy was intact, but it didn't appear to have hinges or a lock. He tapped on it, hoping for a response, but the surface remained as inert as ever. Frustrated, Mace grabbed a plasma cutter and made a careful incision along the edge. As the blade made contact, the ship reacted. A jolt of energy surged through the cutter, sending sparks flying and knocking Mace backward. He landed hard on the floor, the cutter clattering away. The ship's canopy shimmered and dissolved into nothing, revealing the cockpit's interior. Mace stared in awe. The cockpit was a symphony of alien design. The controls were smooth, fluid shapes that shifted when he moved closer. The walls were lined with glowing veins of blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The chair, if it could be called that, was a strange, organic-looking structure that seemed to mold itself to the body. "What in the hell are you?" Mace whispered. He reached out hesitantly, his hand brushing against one of the controls. The moment his fingers made contact, the entire ship roared to life. The veins of light brightened, racing through the walls in intricate patterns. Screens blinked on, displaying alien symbols and star maps. The floor beneath him vibrated softly, as though the ship were waking up from a long sleep. A low, rhythmic hum filled the air, resonating in Mace's chest. Then came the voice. It was faint at first, like static on an old radio. Words formed, distorted and broken, in a language Mace didn't understand. The ship's systems seemed to struggle, recalibrating, until the words shifted into heavily accented galactic common. "Who activates me?" Mace froze, his heart pounding. You can talk?" There was a pause, and the voice grew sharper, more deliberate. "You are not registered. Pilot unknown. Identify." "I'm Mace Ballard," he stammered. "Mechanic. I bought you from a junkyard." The ship emitted a low, guttural sound that might have been laughter. "Junkyard, humiliation. I am no scrap." "Well, you're in rough shape," Mace replied, recovering his composure. "Look, I'm here to fix you. I can't do that if you're going to fight me every step of the way." The ship seemed to consider his words. The hum softened, and the controls shifted subtly, almost as if inviting him to touch them. Mace hesitated, then placed his hand on what he assumed was the main console. A sharp pain shot through his palm as a thin needle emerged, pricking his skin. He yanked his hand back, but it was too late. A droplet of blood was absorbed into the console, and the ship's systems surged again, this time brighter and louder. "What the hell was that?" Mace demanded. "Blood, analysis complete," the voice intoned. "Human. Mechanic. No combat training. Insufficient." "Insufficient for what?" Mace asked, rubbing his hand. The ship didn't answer, but the star maps on the screens began to shift, zooming in on a specific sector of space. A hologram emerged, displaying a planet wreathed in swirling blue clouds. "What's this?" he asked. "My home," the ship replied, its voice softer now. "Destroyed. My mission failed." Mace frowned. The ship was alive, yes, but it also seemed to have a memory, a history. Your mission? What were you supposed to do? To protect my world. To defend. I was the guardian. And now? Now. I am nothing. The sorrow in the ship's voice was palpable, and Mace felt a pang of sympathy. You're not nothing, he said firmly. You just need repairs. And I'm the best mechanic in this quadrant. I'll get you back on your feet. The ship didn't respond, but the lights in the cockpit dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging his words. Mace stepped back, his mind racing. He had thought he was buying a broken ship, but he had stumbled upon something far greater, a sentient, intelligent being with a tragic past. As he left the workshop for the night, the ship's lights followed him to the door, like the gaze of a loyal animal watching its new master. Mace couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than either of them. The first light of dawn filtered through the dusty windows of Mace's workshop as he stood staring at the alien ship, sipping a cup of bitter CAF. Overnight, the ship had grown quieter, its lights dimming to a soft glow as if it had gone dormant. But Mace knew better. The ship was alive, watching, and waiting. He wasn't quite sure what drove him to try flying it. Maybe it was the ship's insistence, the way it had displayed that star map as if beckoning him to follow it. Or maybe it was his own restlessness, the itch for something beyond the monotonous grind of scrapping and repairing. All right, big guy, Mace muttered. Let's see if you're as impressive as you look. He packed a few tools, just in case, and climbed into the cockpit. The seat shifted beneath him, molding to his body like liquid metal. It was unsettling but oddly comfortable. The controls adjusted themselves, shifting into positions that felt intuitive, even though he'd never seen anything like them before. Okay, now what? Mace asked aloud. The ship didn't respond, but the console lights flickered, and a faint hum filled the air. He placed his hands on the controls, and the ship responded immediately, powering up with a throaty roar that sent vibrations through the floor of the workshop. Pre-flight sequence initiated, the ship's voice said, now smoother and more confident. Control transfer granted. Pilot authority, provisional. Provisional? Mace repeated, frowning. Prove competence, the ship replied, a hint of challenge in its tone. Before he could argue, the workshop doors slid open, and the ship lifted off the ground with a smoothness that took Mace's breath away. The inertial dampeners engaged instantly, and the sensation of gravity vanished. The ship floated effortlessly, hovering in the air like a predator ready to pounce. Let's see what you've got, Mace murmured, gripping the controls. With the lightest touch, the ship shot forward, accelerating so fast that Mace was momentarily pinned against his seat despite the dampeners. The ship burst out of the workshop and into the open sky, climbing rapidly through the atmosphere. Clouds whipped past the cockpit, and the blue sky gave way to the blackness of space in mere moments. Holy dash! Mace gasped, gripping the controls tighter as the ship executed a flawless exit from the planet's gravity well. He hadn't engaged any thrusters or adjusted the trajectory. The ship seemed to know exactly what to do. Performance satisfactory, the ship intoned. Speed, optimal. Maneuverability, optimal. Pilot reaction time, suboptimal. Hey! Mace snapped. You're the one flying, not me. Incorrect, the ship replied. Your movements influence mine. I adapt to your input. This is a partnership, not subservience. Great, Mace muttered, rolling his eyes. Even my ship talks back. The displays in front of him shifted, showing a nearby asteroid field. Testing agility. Brace. Wait, what do you mean dash? Before he could finish, the ship plunged into the asteroid field at full speed. Mace gritted his teeth as the ship wove through the massive rocks with precision, banking and rolling in ways that defied physics. The cockpit's holographic displays mapped out the trajectory in real time, predicting collisions and calculating evasive maneuvers faster than Mace could process. "This is insane," he shouted, half in terror, half in exhilaration. The ship didn't respond, but its movements became even sharper, as if reveling in the challenge. After a series of hair-raising maneuvers, it shot out of the asteroid field unscathed, leaving a trail of floating debris in its wake. "Agility test complete," the ship announced. "Pilot performance improving." Mace let out a shaky laugh. "Improving? I'm lucky I didn't have a heart attack." The ship didn't reply, but the faint hum in the cockpit seemed almost amused. As Mace caught his breath, the ship's displays shifted again, returning to the star map it had shown him before. The holographic image of the ruined planet appeared once more, spinning slowly. "Destination identified," the ship said. "Homeworld. Coordinates locked." Mace stared at the hologram, his mind racing. "Why do you want to go there? It's destroyed, right?" "My purpose, incomplete," the ship replied. "Return is necessary." Mace hesitated. "Look, I get it. You've got unfinished business. But I need to know what I'm walking into. What happened there? Why is it gone?" The ship was silent for a moment, as if contemplating his question. Then it spoke, its voice heavy with regret. "Enemy forces. Overwhelming. My mission, to protect, failed." Mace felt a pang of sympathy. The ship wasn't just a machine, it was a being that had lived through loss and defeat. He didn't fully understand its pain, but he recognized the weight of failure in its tone. "All right," he said finally. "We'll go. But I'm not flying into an ambush. If we're doing this, we're doing it smart." "Understood," the ship replied. "Your caution is acceptable." Mace smirked. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." As the ship adjusted its course toward the distant star system, Mace leaned back in the seat, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. He had no idea what they would find on that ruined planet, but one thing was clear: this ship wasn't just a project anymore. It was a partner. And their journey was only beginning. The alien ship glided silently through the void, its sleek form a shadow against the vastness of space. Mace sat in the cockpit, watching the holographic map as the ruined planet came into view. Swirling blue clouds veiled its surface, but the faint outlines of scorched continents and shattered cities peeked through, a silent testament to the devastation that had occurred. Approaching destination, the ship intoned. Its voice carried a mix of anticipation and unease, as though it were reliving memories it wished it could forget. Mace leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the planet. "So, this is your home. What happened here?" The ship hesitated, the lights in the cockpit dimming briefly. Then, with a soft hum, it projected a series of holographic images. The first showed a vibrant world, teeming with life. Towering cities of crystalline structures reached toward the sky, connected by glowing pathways. Ships like the one Mace was piloting soared gracefully above lush forests and shimmering oceans. "This was my world," the ship said, its voice softer than before. "We were a proud people. Advanced. United." The images shifted abruptly. Dark clouds rolled in, and the sky burned with fire as enormous enemy vessels descended upon the planet. The alien attackers were unlike anything Mace had ever seen, huge, insectoid machines that swarmed with terrifying precision. The defenders fought valiantly, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Buildings crumbled, the ground split apart, and the oceans boiled under the relentless assault. The final image lingered, a solitary ship. The ship Mace now sat in, hovering above the ruins, its once pristine hull scarred and smoking. It emitted a desperate signal before vanishing into the stars. "My mission was to protect," the ship said, its tone heavy with regret. "I was created as a guardian, the pinnacle of our technology. But I was not enough. They overwhelmed us. I fled. I've failed. Mace sat back, letting the weight of the ship's words sink in. You didn't have a choice, he said after a moment. You couldn't have saved an entire planet on your own. Perhaps, the ship replied. But my creators entrusted me with their lives. Their future. I carry their legacy, and I could not fulfill my purpose. Mace looked out at the ruined planet, his jaw tightening. He had expected to find a piece of advanced technology when he bought the ship, but what he had stumbled upon was so much more a living, thinking entity burdened by guilt and loss. He felt a surge of anger, not at the ship, but at the injustice of it all. An entire civilization wiped out, and the one thing meant to protect it left to wander aimlessly through the galaxy. Well, you're not alone anymore, Mace said firmly. You've got me now. And maybe we can figure out a way to make things right. The ship's lights brightened slightly, as if in acknowledgement. You would help me? Mace shrugged. I'm a mechanic, not a soldier. But I've got tools, brains, and a stubborn streak. We'll figure something out. The ship seemed to process his words. Then the display shifted, showing a detailed scan of the planet below. There is something you should see, it said. The scan highlighted a structure on the planet's surface, a massive, intact facility buried beneath layers of ash and debris. The ship zoomed in, revealing that the facility was powered, its faint energy signature still active after all this time. What is that? Mace asked. A vault, the ship replied. Our people's last hope. It was designed to preserve our knowledge, technology, and survivors. If any remain. Mace's heart skipped a beat. There might be survivors? Uncertain, the ship admitted. The vault was built to endure. It is possible. But it requires activation. Let me guess, Mace said, rubbing the back of his neck. We have to go down there, don't we? Correct, the ship replied. Your assistance is necessary. Mace sighed, his nerves tingling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. All right, let's do this. But you'd better keep me alive down there. The ship didn't respond, but as it descended toward the planet's surface, Mace could feel its resolve. The air grew heavy with tension as they entered the atmosphere, skimming over the ruined landscape. Jagged mountains and scorched plains stretched as far as the eye could see, remnants of a once thriving world. They landed near the vault, the ship settling onto the ground with a grace that belied its size. The entrance to the facility loomed ahead, partially buried but still intact. Mace grabbed his toolkit and stepped out, the ship's voice following him through his comms. Be cautious, it warned. The vault may be compromised. Great, Mace muttered, approaching the entrance. The air was thick with ash, and the silence was deafening. He cleared debris from a control panel near the door and connected his tools, working quickly to bypass the ancient system. As the door hissed open, a faint light spilled out, illuminating a long corridor lined with glowing conduits. The air inside was cool and still, untouched by time. Mace stepped in, his heart pounding. The ship spoke softly through his comms. Thank you. For what? Mace asked, his voice echoing in the corridor. For giving me purpose again, it replied. Mace smiled faintly and continued down the corridor, ready to face whatever awaited them in the vault. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: he and the ship were no longer just a mechanic and a vessel. They were partners, bound by a shared mission to uncover the secrets of a lost world and perhaps to forge a new future together.